Hey everybody, it's me, Remy, the comic book poser, and I'm here to tell you which 6 books that I absolutely fell in love with from last week's new comic book day, and you'll find out what made the list after this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Alright, this week, like I said, my pull list video was huge for me. I ended up picking up like 42 books during the week, which means I, need to sell a kidney to be able to afford my new comic book day tab. There were maybe only 2 books that I read this week that I didn't like. Everything else I thought was pretty good, so whittling this list down to 6 was pretty hard, but here's what made the cut. Coming in at number 6, and it surprises me even, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 53 by Ryan Parrott, art by Moises Hidalgo and Walter Baiamonte. I started hopping into this because I liked Ranger Slayer, I liked Draken number 1, and I wasn't sure how the events in the Draken and Ranger Slayer stuff would impact the continuity of Mighty Morphin or Go-Go, but I decided to give this a check out. This is my first Mighty Morphin Power Rangers title book, and it's pretty interesting. You find that someone is creating a new army to finally try and take down the Power Rangers, and we'll see if they could be successful. And we learn that these become the Dark Rangers, and it's actually kind of cool because there are a lot of the classic kind of goofy Power Rangers villains that I remember from watching the show when I was a kid that are all like, oh crap, we can do awesome things now. Oh man, why didn't we get guns? So it was a fun read. The art is pretty good. It did give me a bit of a nostalgia trip, but it's also, continuing in its own right in terms of looking at the Rangers versus the Dark Rangers. It's still got some of the greatest hits of villains, but it feels like a fresh new take. So, Burke, you win again. Power Rangers makes the list. Coming in at number 5 is Rogue Planet number 4 from Oni Press. It's by Cullen Bunn, Andy McDonald, Nick Filardi. Issue 3 was a trip in terms of the 2 crews showing up on the planet, the sacrifices that happened, the hallucinations and the forced druggings that happened of the crew. But we noticed that when people showed up with fear, all of these dead beings that were on the planet kind of came back to life, so fear is kind of what feeds the alien menace on the planet. And part of the crew successfully gets in their spacecraft and attempts to launch. And when the beings on the planet couldn't get any stranger, the art couldn't get any darker or more dope, this team just kind of killed it. That as we're watching the spacecraft try and leave the surface of the planet and make it into the atmosphere, those couple of splash pages are just amazing in terms of looking at the evolution of the space flight. And it's really cool. This book is really good. It's Cullen Bunn in space doing the things that Cullen Bunn does best. Andy and Nick on this book are also amazing. It's going to continue to be one of my favorites each week when it comes out. But why have one Cullen Bunn book in the top 6 when you could have number 2? Coming in at number 4 is Unearthed number 7 from Image. It's Cullen Bunn, Baldemar Rivas, Kyle Stram, and Crank on the letters. This is I think it's the first book of the next arc where you get a nice little rundown at the beginning of the first arc that you had this team kind of go into a cave in the beginning, and they found some kind of being that was taking control of bodies and doing things like creepy horror shit that Cullen Bunn writes about, taking control of everything. We're starting to see some of these folks kind of pick up the pieces from the first arc. So you see some of the members of the team who are kind of haunted by the specter of things that they were or were not able to do. And then we see kind of the evolution of the parasitic viral threat. The intensity picks up real hard in the last 5 or 6 pages of the book in terms of looking at what the next stage of the threat is in terms of the entities from the cave. How will these entities from the cave become more of a terrestrial threat? And we get a really good answer to that at the end, and it's something that A, I didn't see coming, and B, is going to make this book even crazier than it's been up to this point. Coming in at number 3, I feel like this is in everybody's list this week, that it was just this damn good. I know it was the top of the list for a couple of people. In terms of getting to see different elements of, like, you know, Batman's different scars in terms of dealing with all of the different villains in the early arcs. Like, I think this is kind of a really interesting nod to all of the things that Batman has been dealing with in continuity, in Elseworlds, in anything that Batman has had to deal with. And this is just a good kind of classic detective story in terms of determining whether or not there is one Joker, if there are 3 Jokers, have there always been 3 Jokers, is there one real Joker? This was a really, really, really good book in terms of looking at especially the battle between one of the Jokers and the Red Hood, since the Joker was Red Hood for a while. And just watching this all play out in the first book makes me wonder, A, what in the hell is going to happen in book 2, and B, how are they only going to do this in 3 books? I think this is already a killer series, and we've just seen the first one, so we have to wait a month for the next one. Coming in at number 2, All Good Things Come to an End. So from AWA and Upshot Studios is Red Border number 4, by Jason Starr, Will Conrad, and Yvonne Nunez. I didn't know how this book was going to end. We could all guess that it was going to be kind of crazy based on the people kind of fleeing the house and being tracked by both the white folks who do weird stuff to Mexicans and then the cartel. So we see that they've successfully caught half of the couple, brought them back to the house, and are prepared to torture him. But you also see that the cartel is getting ready to try and still track the woman and her boyfriend down. And one of the things that I think I said in summarizing book 3 was that the end of this book is gonna kind of feel like a Django Unchained, where a lot of shots are being fired, there's a lot of ridiculous violence at the end, and you want, like, knowing that that's coming, how is it all going to be resolved, and is anybody going to survive? And I thought it was kind of an interesting, kind of intense, heart-pounding, like, action sequence until we get to the final resolution of the book. This was a home run for me. All 4 issues that AWA Upshot put out for Red Border, hands down, was my favorite series. I am, still liking just about everything else, but Red Border for me was just a little bit higher up on the food chain in terms of the titles. It was an excellent read. I want to see more out of these creators again in the future, because I think they've created a really unique storytelling experience, some really, like, nasty art in like the best of ways that made you feel immersed in this cinematic experience of the couple who thought they were safe when they crossed the border, but landing in that house was probably the worst thing that could have happened. Great book. I'm sad it's gone, but I'm excited for more of these shared universe titles coming out from AWA. I feel like if this book didn't come in at number 1, I would hate myself. Coming in at number 1 is Philadelphia from Image by Rodney Barnes, art by Jason Sean Alexander, and colors by Luis NCT. A lot of things happened at the end of book 6, and we got some resolution in the arc. We saw some little breadcrumbs to create a trail of what might be happening in terms of the second arc. We get to see Sanger Jr. kind of questioning whether or not he is going to be as good of a detective or as effective of a detective as his father, but also wondering, how will they kind of successfully deal with the vampire threat now that it's gone back further underground. And then what this arc focuses on is kind of the rise of the new villain, and you get a glimpse of a new face this kind of tortured soul in all kinds of restraints on the front cover. And we learn that this person's name is Jupiter, and we learn what makes them tick, how long they've had a relationship with the Addams family, and what exactly they are capable of. And as we see more and more of the second phase of Abigail's plan, it really makes me think that this arc of Philadelphia is just going to be wilder than the first. And I think they set a pretty high bar that, all 6 books in Philadelphia's first arc were outstanding. And it already seems like in book 7 that they're aware that the expectations are high, and they're already, delivering in the first book of the next arc. So it was fantastic. It was something that I had to read right away. It immediately went to the top of the pile, and it stayed there all week. That it was my favorite read. It was the first thing, and it was going to be very, very hard to knock it further down the list. So what did you think about what you read this week? Are there any books that you disagreed with? Of the 4 million books that I read this week, are you curious of how things kind of ended up on the rest of the list? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to talk about any of these books further, I'm willing to chat in the comment section as well, that your discussions are more engaging than the random porn bots that show up half the time. So yeah, let me know. So as always, thanks for stopping by, and have a good one.